as we sit here and work out audio problems down here.
I don't know. Maybe this is better.
Is it?
I have no
Yes,
idea. Okay.
it is.
Great.
All right. So let me properly promote the fact that you are here from South Florida. And first off, sir, what is the mug, by the way?
It's, I don't know, a yellow one they had in the Airbnb.
How did you? It's like, so you chose the Airbnb route as opposed to anything else for this particular.
I have stayed at this Airbnb, one of these Airbnbs. I have several. Every time I've come to Fort Lauderdale, except for once, which is every year we've been able to come down here. So it's relatively inexpensive. There's a pool literally right outside my door, and it's close to the bars on Las Olas and close to the beach. So,
aha. And we know why you're down there for vacation purposes only.
Yeah, I am only here to enjoy the South Florida sun, sand, and beach. There are no other reasons for me being on this trip.
Correct. What I told you and what I've told everybody on the show this morning is that for reffing down here this week, I need you to treat me like I'm 12.
Okay.
And what I want to do is, with this season's version of reffing down here, is I want to make sure that folks can understand why a call can go one way or the other. So, first and foremost, as you open up the glossary for reffing down here, what is DOGSO?
DOGSO literally means denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. So what we saw on Saturday night was, in the referee's opinion, an obvious goal-scoring opportunity that was denied by a foul from an Atlanta United player, and that player was issued a red card. DOGSO is always a red card. You have the lesser version, which is stopping a promising attack. That's kind of the new thing that we've termed it. But DOGSO outside of the penalty area, always a red card. The 4 Ds of DOGSO, because that's the next step of this, right? This is where a lot of people are getting feathers ruffled. And, look, it's a great thing to talk about. But at the end of the day, you have defenders, distance, and direction. So how many defenders are left? How far away is the attacker from the goal? How far away is the attacker from the ball? And is the attacker going toward goal? So I think, people rightfully were questioning if the red card to Brad Guzan met all 4 of those components. Yes, it did, to be quite honest. And I think what didn't help is when you look at Brad, obviously coming off his line, he heads the ball. Well, he's the last defender at that point. There's not even a goalkeeper behind him. He's the last defender for sure. So that doesn't help him. So defenders, no more after that. Direction, the play is headed toward goal. I think that's, I know some people are trying to say, oh, well, it wasn't directly in line with goal. No, but it was heading toward goal. It's reasonably in that direction. Then you have distance to the goal. Well, it was the foul was 23 yards away from the goal, maybe 22, somewhere near the top of the arc, so very close. I think we can all agree. And then the last one that I think people are getting a little, I don't want to say confused about, but their sticking point, their arguments are about the distance from Bouanga. No, it wasn't Bouanga. Bogish, the other B.
Yes.
To the ball after it hit his face. And I'll concede that is probably the one that is the least obvious of these 4 categories, right? It's not super obvious that he would have necessarily caught up to the ball. I think that's a fair belief to hold. However, we don't know because Brad stuck his leg out and tripped him. And I think what Brad got in trouble for is that at the beginning, I think the referee, when you just see Brad win a header and kind of come through, you're like, yeah, well, he won the header. It happened to hit the guy's face. And things like this happen, unfortunately, in soccer. But then when you look at the replay, and this is where VAR, I thought, could have been a little quicker. We'll talk about urgency in VAR. But I think VAR first was looking to make sure that it met most of the criteria, right? Yes, there's only one defender or no defenders. All those keys that we talked about. I think where the referee made his decision was that, we can't judge intent necessarily, but Brad's right leg clearly moves away from his natural body silhouette and trips Bogusz as he's trying to run by. At that point, it's obviously a foul. And then you're looking at, it's kind of hard to say that it's not denying an obvious goal scoring opportunity.
Okay, so let me walk through the other side before we get into review and time at a monitor and things like that. Why should this have not been called DOGSO red?
Well, I think, like I said, the distance and direction, distance to the ball and direction of play are the two that probably are the least resolute. He obviously is not super close to the ball. I think it is debatable if he would catch up to it. I do think he probably would have been able to make a play on it. And I think the direction is also another one where, yes, it's not directly heading into the goal. But you don't always know that. You just have to be heading toward goal, not necessarily that you're going to be right at goal. I think it's harder to make the argument that it wasn't a DOGSO red card than it was a DOGSO red card.
Okay, I'm watching the play over again.
If you notice in the VAR, though, I think during the time at the monitor, John, I think the referee is looking a lot at the distance from Bogusz to the ball after the play.
Okay, so initially it looks like Boyko is calling goal kick.
Yes. He looks at his AR. They both say, yeah, that's a goal kick.
So Boyko motions goal kick. Then the review, which has to be clear and obvious error, correct?
Yes.
So review from VAR, clear and obvious error. It is not a goal kick. It is DOGSO red.
Yeah, it's a foul. I think the review indicated that this was a foul, and that was the clear and obvious error from the referee, right? I think the referee probably thought, no, Brad didn't foul him. What are you talking about? He just happened to come through the guy, but that's also Bogusz's fault as much as it's Brad's. But the review indicated a foul. The review showed that Brad trips the player, and tripping is a direct free kick foul.
Okay.
So then at that point, the DOGSO gets triggered as well. Because DOGSO and a red card, right, is one of those game-defining or game-changing decisions. So at this point, if there's a foul, right, normal foul, we wouldn't be reviewing this because it's probably not DOGSO. If it's just, a lazy challenge, someone sticking their leg out, but there's 5 defenders in the box, it's nothing. It's just, okay, well, it's foul. But we don't have to review it. But as soon as there's a DOGSO component to this, now we have to review what's going on. And the review showed, yep, there's a foul. That's a DOGSO. And then we had to say, is this DOGSO? And that's what the review is. It's just determining, yes, there is a foul. Is this DOGSO? And I think it's really hard to say that once you see Brad trip the player and the player is heading toward goal with a relatively close ability to play the ball, it's got to be DOGSO.
Why not just call it a foul outside the 18?
Well, you can't do that then, right? Because at that point, it's nothing. It would have just been a goal kick because VAR doesn't call fouls like that. It's just because the initial call was a goal kick. So because this was a DOGSO potential foul, that's why we had to review all the things. Why? So the option was either it's a goal kick or it's a DOGSO red card foul.
Okay. So then why did this take so effing long? Because if you're looking for a clear and obvious error, this was not something that seemed to be clear and obvious, because if the review took and I've got to go back and look at this. It
took a long time. We had 8 minutes of stoppage time.
Yeah. And that's another thing I got to get into coming up as a part of our essence.
Yeah. I think it's a fair question, John. I think it's fair that it took too long, right? Because to me, once you find the angle that Brad tripped him, you got to signal to the referee, hey, we see a foul. We need to review for DOGSO. And then you're looking at, well, he's clearly the last defender, right? And then you're going through the others. Okay, how far is he from goal? Well, he's pretty close to goal. Is the play heading toward goal? Yeah, it's heading toward goal. And is he in a reasonable distance to play the ball? Yep. I think it shouldn't have taken as long, especially to determine, yes, this was a foul. I think I would have been more fine had the referee spent more time at the monitor to go through his own checklist to say, okay, yes, that's Brad's the last defender. We met the defenders category. Okay, distance. Well, he's 20-some yards out from goal. That's pretty close. Distance to the ball, direction to play. That's where I think you saw a lot of freeze frames from when the time of the ball. Brad tripped him to see where the ball was in comparison. I think I'm okay with taking a while to look at that to make sure. I think the problem for me was it took too long up in the video booth or out in the video booth. I forget where they're at now. Dallas.
Dallas.
Right? Yeah. That's the problem. You moved everything from Atlanta. You went to Dallas, so got stuck in traffic even worse than we got. Mm-hmm. But I think had they spent more time, the center referee spent more time in the video screen himself, I think we would have been a little more okay. I do have a problem with how long VAR took to look. The VAR took to signal, hey, you need to go look at this. But I'm always a proponent of the referees using the video screens to make the final call because they're the ones who are in control of this match and are trying to call it based on how they want to call it, which I'm sure, again, we'll get into when we talk about the Premier League. Mm-hmm. So, again, I think it's really hard to make the case that this wasn't a red card. I know as Atlanta fans, we really want to say it wasn't. But it's one of those where Brad has to make this play, and it's just unfortunate that it hit the guy in the face. Like, honestly, it could have gone a million different ways. And it's also unfortunate that hit him in the face and literally rebounded like straight on. If it goes in any a direction off of to the left or whatever, we're not even looking at this anyway. It was an unfortunate series for Brad. And I think it's I'm not getting into goalkeeper discussion, but I'm just going to say that I think this is something that we have been frustrated with Brad over the past couple years of his. The man is 39, but he does not think that he is as slow as a 39-year-old is. And he does come off his line quite a bit, which is fine. I don't personally have a problem with that. But he does kind of get into some problems where he is a little slower, a step late, and gets himself into these problems. I mean, this is not the first time we've seen a Brad Guzan red card or penalty kick this month. So, if I'm Brad, I'm maybe considering, do I need to be as aggressive off my line?
So, looking at the replay, multiple angles, after the ball ricochets off Bogus's face and goes straight.
It's fairly straight. I want to say it's direct, but it's not like it hit his head and went elsewhere.
Right. You look at the trail of the ball. The ball goes over the end line outside the 6. I mean, it literally is a straight line, not going toward goal. Like I said, and treat me like I'm 12 today.
Yeah, no, I think, but again, that's one of those where I think if you're looking at the 4Ds, the direction and distance to goal, to the ball are the two that are the least firm in this decision. But I think, again, it doesn't have to be going on goal necessarily, right? This is a goal-scoring opportunity, not an obvious goal.
Okay.
And so the opportunity would have very much still been there, even if you're, 2 yards outside of the 6-yard box. That's still a pretty good goal-scoring opportunity when you consider also that there are 0 defenders left, and really at that point, very few defenders would have would have been able to get back there and help. So I get what you're saying, but again, it's not, it's an obvious goal. It's a goal-scoring opportunity.
Okay.
And that is an obvious goal-scoring opportunity.
Okay. All right. So
I mean, from both players, not for me or you, John. Like, we would flub it, But for a professional who then banged in a free kick right after this, he probably would be able to get that and somehow figure out how to get a ball on a shot on target.
Bart Keeler hanging out with us here for Reffing Down Here, and anything else on Bart's mind that he'll slide into his paragraphs this morning.
It comes out of the coffee, John. I think that's the problem.
joins us from South Florida as he's getting ready for midweek madness involving Major League Soccer. 8 minutes of stoppage time.
Yeah.
Most of that coming from, I'm guessing, the review content.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of stoppages outside of what's his face, Atuesta, being a doofus. The whole game. I love Jarrett's tweet about how he should just be embarrassed. This is embarrassing.
It is. It absolutely is. So when it comes to players that, chirp, as Atuesta is very good at.
Yeah.
How do you handle chirping, and what are your personal end of the line, I'm done with you moments?
I think we saw actually a really good example of this on his first yellow card, where had he just been a little mad the referee didn't call a foul, and the referee would have called a foul had LAFC not had a massive breakaway, like every team seems to get against our team. It was an advantage. I mean, it was a very clear. Atuesta got fouled, maybe 10 yards into his own half, actually maybe deeper, and it's a legitimate foul. I mean, I think he has a right to be unhappy that he didn't get a foul call, but he also has to as a referee, you have to say, no, I played advantage, and at that point, the discussion is over. And Atuesta kept going and kept arguing. And that's where he got the yellow card. And there's a difference between hey, ref, come on, or ref, every kid does that. But when you start actually arguing fouls, when it's a consistent commentary, that just is annoying. And that's where you're going to get yourself in trouble with the referee. And this happens, I usually am, for me personally, they're going to talk. I mean, you can't stop a guy from not saying ref or come on, he's grabbing or whatever. You have to give some feedback. And again, I'm pretty sure that the referee gave the feedback of, well, I played advantage. So I saw the foul, but do you want to go try to score a goal? And Atuesta probably doesn't, because he's a selfish little man who wants to score all the goals himself. And I think, again, when you continue that argument past the initial play, that's also where you're going to get in trouble, right? When you start talking, I mean, the play happened, and it felt like 5 minutes later. I know it wasn't, but it was a long time after that when the referee gave Atuesta a yellow card. And it's why are you still talking to this ref when he clearly told you what happened?
And then all of a sudden, Atuesta feels something's wrong with his body. He falls down, goes boom, and kills time after he gets the second yellow.
Yeah. I would love for MLS to be able to put some sort of. It's hard because, we can't police injuries for real, but listen, if you thought he was actually injured, I have some oceanfront property in Arizona,
Yeah.
I'll sell that to you as well.
And then the stretcher comes out, and then all of a sudden, magically, he's okay, and then he walks down the tunnel.
Oh, darn. Yeah. And this is where I think, you look at MLS trying to implement a lot of protocols around injuries, substitutions around injuries, how much time it takes for an injured player. Those are things that their league is clearly trying to weed out. Just based on the protocols they put in place. But it's tough when he's already supposed to leave the field, right? And you can't give him another, you can't, double secret ovation him and give him another red card. But I would like for DOGSO committee to punish players more for not exiting, in a proper manner. And this is one where you didn't leave it. You did not leave with any sort of urgency, and he needs to be punished for that, honestly.
Why doesn't a center ref add time? Did they just lose track of time their own selves? I mean, 8.
Yeah, this is something that I do have a problem with, John, and I think we may have even talked about it on here. I think it's a little silly for the center referee to be the only person who tracks time and stoppage time, for that matter. This seems like, to me, a perfect opportunity for VAR or an AVAR or the fourth official to be the ones checking their watch. Maybe the fourth official, they're being busy being yelled at by Jim Curtin, but probably an AVAR who's, just tracking like, okay, well, that player, okay, well, he went down at, 49-51 and he got back up at 52-30. Okay, we'll add a minute and a half. And, I know that's what we do. And I think that's what the protocol is at a lot of the FIFA tournaments, which, people then hate that we have, 12 minutes of stoppage time, but they also want to make sure we're adding the proper stoppage time. So you got to pick which side you want to be on. And it's not too many people fall on both sides somehow. But you're right. I think that there should have been more time added than, I think it was 8, but I'm not entirely sure.
It was 8.
Right. Yeah. And it wasn't a lot past 8. It was 8.
It was 7. It was 7:56. It wasn't even 8.
Well, I got news for y'all. The referee starts his watch before that first half whistle blows and second half. The referee's watch probably started, so it was probably 8:00 on his watch.
Yeah.
But no, there should have been time added for that. I think 8 was a little too was too little.
IFAB came out with a notification, and this actually came out this morning. If a player makes contact, and literally you can go to at the IFAB, and this is literally what they put out this morning at 2 hours ago before the show started. If a player makes contact with an opponent's face with the hand or arm while challenging for the ball, the referee awards a direct free kick or penalty kick if the contact is A, careless, no card, B, reckless, caution, no card, C, using excessive force, sending off, red card. Careless. Player shows a lack of attention, consideration when making a challenge. Reckless. Player acts with disregard to the danger to or consequences for an opponent. Excessive force. A player exceeds the necessary use of force and or endangers the safety of an opponent. Which of those is Aaron Long?
This was definitely borderline reckless, I think. This is one of those where it probably could have been a yellow card foul. It really should have been, because it did seem, I don't want to say it was excessive force, but it definitely was one of those where you knew what you were doing. Careless is you go up and you just kind of bump a guy, in the face. That's careless. Your arm's a little too high. Careless could be a high boot where, you're just not paying attention to where the other player is on the field. Those are careless fouls, right? You're not really putting anyone in danger, but you're being a little, you need to play under control. That's my line that I always tell players. This was probably a reckless foul because of the way he used his arm, elbow, forearm, whichever part of the arm you want to call it.
Yeah.
Used it not only to gain an advantage, but in a way that was. I hate to use the word intentional because we cannot judge intent necessarily until we get to actual red card stuff. But it just seemed like he knew what he was doing and had the intention of not having. He didn't have good intentions. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Drawing blood will usually mean that there were no. Good intentions.
Yeah. Again, I don't think it's excessive force. I mean, that would be, that would require a lot of
lining him up, knowing he's there, sitting there looking, and then lining him up.
Absolutely. And I don't think that was necessarily what happened here. It probably could have been a yellow card, but those aren't reviewable either. So
yeah, once again, hate the game, not the player.
Yeah.
When it comes to, I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase this. Consistency. How long did it take you to determine your style when it comes to how you handle a match? The reason I ask is this. You had a center ref who didn't like to call fouls in the first place. Like I said, 55th out of 55 Major League Soccer officials going into this match. He's still 55th. I operated under the assumption, and I guess that's why we should never assume, because it makes an ass out of you and me, that it's because he lets the game go.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not the case. Apparently, at least in this controlled environment that we were in, where he just wasn't calling nothing. It's like, Siri, what is a foul? and it was all over the place. It was called. It wasn't called. It was all over the place.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to develop your consistency and your style in how to manage a match?
It took me looking for fouls, and that sounds really bad as a referee. But the thing that I always talk about with younger referees, because a lot of times, I'll give you two examples, but with younger referees, I always talk about the decision tree. And you have to start the decision tree to arrive at the right decision, right? You have to make a decision first. And that decision has to be looking for improper play from players. That doesn't mean you're looking to call every foul. That just means you are actively watching, you are vigilant, and actively observing the game, right? You're not just out there walking around, running around with the players around you. And so once you start being actively involved and actively observing the game, you're going to see contact. And then you go, was that contact a foul? And then you go, do I need to call that foul? And then you go, do I need to do anything more after I call this foul? And then sometimes it's, what am I writing in my report? But it does start with that initial active engagement into the game. And that's why it does take a long time, because a lot of times, for younger referees, and this particular ref isn't necessarily young, but younger and inexperienced referees, they haven't reached the level of active engagement because they're just making sure they're not running into kids. So they're making sure that they're not, they're getting all the other things right. So they call the obvious stuff because it's obvious, but the little things are harder to find. That said, John, I know a lot of older referees who they say, "Oh, I just let the players play." I let the players play. What they mean is, I'm not confident in myself to be consistent enough with my foul calls, and that is hard because even where I am is doing this for 15 years. You do get yourself where sometimes you call a foul that maybe you didn't call earlier, and sometimes it's because there are conditions that are slightly different. But you develop what you want to see in the game and what you don't want to see in the game, right? What types of challenges do you like? So, for example, I'm a little more lenient on a little of the pushing and shoving with players as long as they're not kicking each other, right? Some referees don't call any of that because, again, they're just not confident enough to be consistent or confident enough that they can make the calls the times they need to. And I think this referee borders on that of maybe not just confident enough to make the foul calls consistently because he's not able to recognize when they need to be called all over the field.
And then you overcorrect.
Some people do, yeah. I mean, I get to the point sometimes where I granted I'm doing 4 games a day, so I'm doing a lot of games. These guys are doing maybe 1 a night, 3 a week, type of thing. I have to sometimes overcorrect myself where I'm like, I feel like I'm calling things a little too tight. And I have to say, okay, well, you're not calling it unless you're 100% sure it's a foul. So you do kind of have to balance yourself, be it game to game or sometimes even in game. And sometimes the in game balancing comes from the players. And you might say, yeah, you know what, hey, Atlanta United doesn't foul out that much. I don't know if this is true. LAFC doesn't foul out that much. Okay, we don't need to go in there looking to call everything because these are 2 teams that relatively want to try to play soccer. I do this a lot in my ECNL boys games where most of the time you think, 17-year-old boys, they're just a bunch of testosterone that are going to punch each other. And while that's sometimes true, as I'm sure Abby can attest to, most of the time at the higher levels, they are actually trying to play soccer. And so if you know that going into the game and you scope it out and you go, okay, well, these are 2 teams that are relatively focused on playing soccer. And yeah, they're going to be fouls because, this is a contact sport. You're going to run into each other. But they're not actively trying to foul each other. Sometimes you might take a step back and be a little lenient with what's going on. But sometimes that backfires where you start seeing teams be more aggressive. And so you have to adjust. A lot of times I've refereed this one guy, Brian, over at TISA. So shout out Brian. He said that, we have 3 phases of the game. We have the beginning where we're trying to set the tone. The middle where we're trying to adjust our tone and involvement in the game. And then the third phase, which is keep that right? We want to keep the tone, keep the level of what we're calling so that we do get to the consistency, especially as things get crazy at the end of the game. So that's what we're looking for. Again, in game, sometimes you're going to change what you might start calling because you approach the game in a different manner, and then it turns out to be a completely different game entirely. I mean, if you went into a Philly game and they started actually passing the ball to each other, that would confuse the hell out of you. Sorry, I don't know why Philly's got me straight this morning. If you went to a St. Louis game and they actually were trying to play out of the back and connect passes to the midfield instead of just running into people, that would confuse you. You're prepared for it, so that might be like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to call things as strictly. But if you were to go to a Columbus Crew game, and all of a sudden they're flying everywhere, running at everyone, trying to kick the ball away before the even gets there, or even after, that would also confuse you. So you would have to adjust your calls at that point as well.
All right, one final thing that I wanted to discuss with you before you get out of here and actually go, I don't know, enjoy the beach or something.
Yeah, beach is on the plans today, yeah.
The 10 points that Wolves made yesterday as the Premier League gets ready for their all-hands-on-deck meeting on June 6th. Wolves are going to make 10 key arguments in favor of scrapping VAR, which is dumb in the first place, but okay, fine. When you look at these 10, there are some that are incredibly haughty in their HAUGHTY, haughty, in their observations.
Not hotty-toddy.
Yes, not HODDY or HOTTY, depending on how you spell it. But when you look at 10, what is your overarching thought about what Wolves thinks about VAR?
I don't think these are arguments to scrap VAR because people have always distrusted referees. And I think one of the problems is the way, because we got to a point where we have much better replays, we could see how wrong referees were at some points, because sometimes we get it wrong. We're only 3 people out there chasing around world-class sprinters who are trying to kick a little ball around. We're going to miss stuff. What I think these are more points to how to fix VAR and adjust the processes and protocols, because as I've said multiple times on this here show, the Premier League has the worst VAR protocols and processes that I've seen of any major league, right? And I think, to me, they just need to adjust how they're doing it. Because I think VAR, we argue about it a lot, and we go through it seems like every week we have to go through it. And I get that. But wouldn't we also be going through, if there was no VAR, right, and Brad didn't get that red card, well, LAFC fans would be going through well, look at this replay. Look what happened here. How did that not get called? And instead, we're going, well, how come it took so long for them to call a red card? But at the end of the day, I think the call was right, and that's what you want to get. I do think that sometimes, I think the argument that, fans have lost trust is a little. Look, you can make a poll, say whatever. Hey, by the way, it's an election season. You can make a poll, say whatever the hell you want it to say, by the way, depending on how you ask the question or how you interpret the data. So I think that's a little bit what's going on with their fan trust thing. But I do think there's some level of truth to the fan enjoyment that the delayed joy, I think, is one of their key points is, you're not celebrating fully because you're afraid of a VAR call. And it's like, well, you can still celebrate, but unfortunately sometimes these things might be wrong. But how many times have we celebrated and then you look over and the referee's got the AR's got his flag up for an offside?
Yep.
That happens too.
Okay. Like I said, I just wanted to get your.
I think Wolves is just sour grapes. I think all of these are more critical points that VAR and the Prem, PGMOL need to work on to try to get better at it. Not necessarily any argument for scrapping it.
Right, and that's
they can be better.
Yeah, that just get better at it, and that happens with age and patience, neither of which the Premier League seems to have when it comes to new ideas.
Well, you forget, John, the Premier League is the greatest sporting institution that's ever sported. They have done nothing wrong ever in the 20-plus year, almost 30-year history of the Premier League. But even more so, the FA in England have never done anything wrong in the game of soccer, ever. That's why they've only ever won a World Cup on their home soil.
One more thing before you go, before I kick you out so you can go enjoy the beach. Abby wants to know about idea about adding 2 more ARs to be able to call which team gets throw-ins, when the AR is in midfield, expected to make a call to near corners to who gets the ball. They can't always tell who really was last to touch.
I mean, that's fair. That's also the center referee's job at that point.
Okay.
The AR is just hopefully telling you that the ball went out of play or not necessarily who it came off with. And that's true for just about anywhere on the field, to be honest. The center referee has the final say. And a lot of times in those corners that you're talking about, Abby, that's where the center referee needs to be deep and making those calls. But I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it is a legitimate issue with soccer that we have too few officials actually on the field for the amount of action that's going on. I mean, shit, hockey has 4. You know,
two refs and 2 assistants.
And they have 12 kids on the ice. That's a pretty high proportion. Basketball has 3. 3 to the 10. Even baseball, which has literally no actual action going on ever in the games, in sport ever, has a freaking umpire at every damn base. You know, I mean,
and then more in the postseason.
And sometimes, but that's where I think you look at those postseason umpires who are doing the line calls out in the outfield. Do they really help? Maybe a little, but it also could be fixed by the umpire on third and first.
Actually, turning around.
Getting their little butts in gear and moving. R.I.P. Angel Hernandez.
And then some don't have little butts, I guess. That's where we're going.
Yeah, that's the other problem. Right? They're not little butts.
What's the latest with Soccer for USPod before you get out of here? We'll talk.
We dropped a roster talk on Friday. I was hoping to maybe do something with the women's roster coming out. We'll see if that happens. I am on vacation, and I don't get back until Thursday at 9:30 p.m. So we will see. But if it doesn't, we'll have recaps of the first Emma Hayes games, which is really exciting. We have Emma Hayes finally here. She's doing her press tour. She's on Good Morning America or Today? One of those two.
Sure.
She's here. She's finally ours. She's here to lead us to victory. She's got to beat the Spaniards at some point. So
there you go. Go enjoy the beach, my friend. Thanks for hopping on, and we will catch up with you on the next edition of Repping Down Here and Stuff.
Yeah. Hope if anyone's at the game, hope we have fun watching. Hopefully, Messi play. I have 3 tickets. I have tickets to 3 matches that may or may not involve Messi this year. I'm hoping I get to see him once. So.
Oh wow! Okay. Enjoy your Airbnb mug, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Bye, y'all.
All right.